It is known as the biggest oval racetrack on NASCAR's schedule, a place filled with speed, opportunity, but above all, chaos. This is Talladega Superspeedway, a racetrack that is known to almost all race fans and even a majority of non-race fans. The track has always been viewed as an absolute spectacle due to the unique style of racing along with the many controversies that have run throughout its time. Even in the beginning, Talladega was known as one of the most controversial tracks on the schedule, and there has been one group of people who have never been able to tame the chaotic 2.66 mile racetrack, and that is NASCAR themselves. Now, most of us are aware that NASCAR is typically not the best at making calls during races. In fact, it has already happened a couple times this year. But there have been times where NASCAR themselves have made a call so bad that it stays in many people's minds for months, maybe even years. And there was one call that was so bad that it not only damaged the reputation of Talladega in the sport, but it almost led to the biggest tragedy in NASCAR history. This is the start of a potential new series known as the biggest blunders made by NASCAR.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important announcement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are currently here at the finish line of the Murder Your Feet Marathon, where the distance is exactly 6.662 miles long. And we have one person who's clear out in front. So let's put our cameras towards him, because it looks like he's going to be able to win this race.
And I see him running on over here, and that is Vanillawafer's partnered with Liquid Death. He's got the energy of all the iced tea in the world, and there he is. He's more happier than ever. Let's talk to him. Mr. Vanillawafers, this is Bob here, and let me tell you, that was an impressive run there. It looked like you had 6 different flavors of Liquid Death iced tea in you. Who do you got to thank for this?
Well, let me tell you guys something. There's only one company I can thank for this, and that is Liquid Death iced tea, for giving me such a quality drink that only has 30 calories and much less sugar than the rival brands. It was because of them that I was able to run on average 25 miles per hour. We have to stop you right there, Bob, because we're just getting news right now that the winner of this race is now disqualified for cutting the course. Let's watch the replays.
Okay, and this is the 5th mile here. Let's see what we got here. Oh, you see right there, his foot slightly touches the line. No advantage there, but we still got to disqualify him.
That's ridiculous! You can't take my victory away! Oh, I'm out of here!
Make sure to go to liquiddeath.com and get your next drink of Liquid Death. Don't be scared, it's just iced tea.
This just in, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
I've been waiting 8.5 months for it, buddy. Reach up there and pull those belts tight one more time Saturday night. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
The 2008 season was one for the history books for multiple reasons. The 50th Daytona 500 took place, Toyota became the first foreign manufacturer to win in decades, and Jimmy Johnson did the unthinkable and scored his 3rd championship in a row. This was also the start of the first full-time season of the infamous Generation 5 car, better known as the Car of Tomorrow, a car that brought safety to a whole new level while giving up the looks of what fans came to love. If NASCAR truly wanted to please its fans with this new car, then the COT had to perform at tracks that mattered the most in fans' eyes. Those tracks being Daytona, Bristol, Indianapolis, Darlington, and of course, Talladega. Unfortunately for NASCAR, most of these races didn't captivate fans as they were hoping so. In fact, the worst one happened to be the Brickyard 400 itself, thanks to the tire debacle that inevitably ruined the event. But perhaps they could make it up in the end, as one of the last races of the year was at Talladega. Surely the fans' most beloved track wouldn't disappoint, right? Well,
control of him now. Let's see. Right there it is. He has to make. Yeah. There's nothing you can do.
Close.
Oh, right there.
Man.
Yeah, tire blows.
Denny Hamlin in the wall, the leader. Another problem now.
You okay, Denny?
Definitely got some kind of issue right here with these tires.
Yes, we do.
throughout the entire race, the tires were behaving like ticking time bombs, waiting to explode at any moment, leading to some severe accidents as well as chase drivers losing opportunities to continue on for the championship. However, with a few laps to go, there seemed to be one last redeeming hope for the race, as many of the drivers running near the front were ones that were looking for their first win in the Cup Series. And as we have seen plenty times in the past, Talladega is one of those racetracks that seems to provide the occasional underdog with the victory. Up front was Tony Stewart, who had many victories in his regiment up to this point, but was still looking to score his first win at Talladega, and right behind him were two young guns representing Team Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Driving the 01 machine was Regan Smith, the eventual Rookie of the Year in 2008, and Paul Menard, a Wisconsin driver with full sponsorship backing that would make any team owner hard for Menard. Coming to the white flag, everyone seemed to stay in a single file line waiting for the right moment to pounce. Fans were hoping that something redeeming could come from this race, and as everyone exited turn number 4, everyone was wondering where the grand move would take place. Then finally, at the tri-oval, he made his move.
Got to run.
Here they come.
I can't go down there and do that, though.
Actually, I think it's legal on the last lap.
He might have got it right there. I think it's legal on the last lap. We're looking next door to see.
Below the yellow line. It was below.
We still haven't got an indication, but it looks like Regan Smith won this race.
Regan Smith, while going through the tri-oval, made the pass on the number 20 car for his first win in the NASCAR Cup Series. At least, that's what people thought. See, at super speedways, there is a rule where a driver cannot go below the yellow line to advance their position. Should they do that, NASCAR will either black flag the driver to go down pit road or be scored as the last car on the lead lap if it is the last lap. The rule also states that if a driver is forced below the yellow line by another driver, then the driver that forced them below the yellow line would be penalized. On the replays, it was clear as day that Regan Smith was below the yellow line entering the tri-oval, but at the same time, Tony Stewart forced him below the line to ensure that Smith could not make the pass, thus making Tony Stewart the one that should receive the penalty. Seemed like a pretty open shut case. However, NASCAR came back with a verdict just 55 seconds after the finish.
Yeah.
They are saying Tony Stewart has won the race. Tony Stewart is the official winner here at Talladega. They would not allow that pass below the yellow line.
Tony Stewart was credited with the victory of the Amp Energy 500, while Regan Smith was penalized for the last lap pass, giving him the 18th place finish. Although it was a happy moment for Stewart fans as he was able to end his 40-plus race winless streak, the rest of the racing world was outraged by the result. It was clear that the 01 car was forced below the yellow line, but officials quickly came to the answer that didn't matter as it was his car that went below. Fans immediately dug up past finishes where drivers went below the yellow line but never received a penalty. Whether or not it was due to which driver would commit the crime, that is still undecided, but let's just say that NASCAR has been biased in the past. Regan Smith was clearly frustrated in his interview, letting everyone know that even in the drivers' meeting, that if you are forced below the yellow line, it's fair game on the last lap, and that he should be the one celebrating victory lane and not Tony Stewart. Regan Smith would leave the track empty-handed and leave with an ominous message on how he felt about the call not being made.
I could have piled up the whole field, and I guess that would have been a cooler finish. I don't know, but...
The following season was 2009, and NASCAR was in a rougher patch with the fans after the previous season, with constant letdowns at key races, constant issues with tires, and of course, questionable calls. NASCAR was just hoping that 2009 could win back some of the fans that had a sour taste in their mouth. It started out rough with the 2009 Daytona 500 ending prematurely due to NASCAR calling the race after 15 minutes of rain. Still, perhaps NASCAR could find a way to redeem themselves after constant mistakes at the beloved restrictor plate tracks. They would have their chance to redeem themselves only 10 weeks later at Talladega Superspeedway. Plenty of ambition was felt around the racetrack as it appeared to be a perfect day for race day. 43 cars set out on the track to become the next person to conquer the famous 2.66 mile racetrack. Some looked to add on to their already impressive regimen. Others were looking to get their first win at the track. Some tried to get their first win of the season. And there were even a few that wanted to touch victory lane for the first time in the NASCAR Cup Series. Once the green flag dropped, the battle was on. After after 490 miles, the once 43-car field had been reduced by nearly 50% due to the disarray that Talladega was well known for. To make it to the final few laps, drivers needed to have speed, but also as much luck to survive. And when the dust settled for the final 2 laps, 4 drivers emerged as the remaining few who could win the race: Dale Earnhardt Jr., Ryan Newman, Carl Edwards, and Brad Keselowski. Each driver had a lot of pressure to make it into victory lane. Newman was running with a brand new team, Edwards was looking to win for the first time at a restrictor plate track, and Earnhardt Jr.'s teammates have won the previous 3 races. However, the biggest outlier is the 4th driver in the group, and that is Brad Keselowski in the 09 car. Brad Keselowski was only running a part-time schedule in the 2009 season with both Hendrick Motorsports and Phoenix Racing. In the race, Keselowski was driving for Phoenix Racing, a team that had been around the sport for a couple of decades at this point, but not once had the team entered victory lane in that time span. In fact, 2009 was the first ever season where the team attempted every single race. With just 2 laps to go, Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski had run down Ryan Newman and Dale Jr. to take the lead with just 1 more lap to go. As they went around the track, everyone was wondering when Keselowski would make his move to get around the 99 car. As they went through the tri-oval, Brad Keselowski moved to the top and was immediately blocked, then tried to go down to the bottom where Edwards looked to block again. At this point, everyone, including Keselowski, remembers the finish of the race that happened 6 months prior. With that still fresh on his mind, Brad Keselowski does something that forever makes this finish a staple in NASCAR history.
So the last second it picks up down to the outside as Edwards goes. Oh, he turns it. No. Oh, and that destroyed the front end of Newman's car. No. Edwards will not make it to the flag. Oh, Keselowski won this race. Edwards' car destroyed. Junior's protege. Keselowski, the winner, and Carl Edwards is moving around in a timeout.
In just a few hundred yards, Talladega and NASCAR had provided one of the craziest finishes in NASCAR history. Once Carl Edwards attempted to force the 09 below the yellow line, Brad held his line and had the 99 car spin across his front bumper. Because of this, the back wing of the COT car caused enough drag to lift the car up and into the direction of Ryan Newman. Newman had nowhere to go and clipped the car head on, causing Edwards to fly up into the air. Edwards' 99 car then slammed into the outside catch fence, almost similar to what happened in 1987 with Bobby Allison. Luckily for NASCAR, the fence held the car onto the track, and what looked to be a tragic incident in the sport was narrowly avoided. Edwards was fine and ran across the finish line, but the car was utterly destroyed. While in victory lane, Brad Keselowski made it clear that he didn't want to wreck Carl Edwards, but he had to hold his line due to the fact that he knew if he went below the yellow line, his chances of winning would be stripped by officials, meaning that the 2008 finish 6 months prior was clearly in his mind on the last lap. In the end, no one was hurt, and NASCAR seemingly got away with one of the craziest finishes in its history. However, what makes this finish so interesting is the fact that it was seemingly caused thanks to a controversial call that NASCAR made. Prior, many were still unclear on how the double yellow line truly operated, but after the call was made after the 08 race, it was clearer than ever that this was the route the drivers should proceed. Somehow, NASCAR was able to get past this blunder as it seemed like the sport was back on the fans' good side. Well, sort of. But many understand how close this truly was for being one of the most tragic moments ever in motorsports, showing us that one of NASCAR's biggest blunders almost became NASCAR's biggest tragedy.